So there's a very famous photo from the White House briefing room where President Obama was speaking at the podium and Bill Clinton comes in and he's like, hey, I feel like that's me again. So it's me again. Hi. And you might notice that this gentleman is definitely not Michael Casey, and Marco not here. So we are going to have a conversation, a little fireside chat with Mike Piwowar, who you've heard from earlier, but you've heard him primarily moderate. I want to pick this man's brain because he has been in the Beltway for what, 2 decades now? Something? I won't date it. Yeah. So I just brought up at the end of our last panel what a golden opportunity there is around a regulatory framework that can actually do what it's supposed to, give guidance going forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and like how we get there, what the next steps look like from January 20th on.
Yeah, no, great. So this morning, you were here this morning. I started off a joke and said, I'm here from Washington, D.C. I'm here to help. It turns out, it's not so much of a joke, right? So what I thought I'd do is take this opportunity to give some insights into how we see things playing out, right? So there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of optimism. We've got the first crypto administration ever in the United States. We heard from Senator Lummis earlier today that it looks like there's sort of going to be 3 separate bills work their way through Congress, one being on stablecoins, one being on sort of everything else, and then one on the strategic Bitcoin reserve that she talked about. And the thing with Washington, D.C. that people don't understand is how slowly some things work. But also, because it's so slow, how many opportunities there are for folks to weigh in and have their voices heard to shape the legislation that then results in regulation, and then also to help shape the regulation and that stuff. So I thought I'd sort of give some insights into that, right? So, so the new administration is going to take effect. President Trump will come in January 20th. Sometime early in January, a little bit before that, the House and the Senate will start to organize who's on which committees, who's getting different subcommittee assignments, all those sorts of things. We pretty much know who the big players are going to be in the Senate. So Senator Tim Scott, who's very pro-crypto, is more than likely going to be the Senate Banking Committee chairman. His staff is very open. I'll talk about how you can weigh in and talk to them. On the Democratic side, what ended up with Elizabeth Warren being the ranking member. Not so crypto friendly, right? But she's in the minority. And there's other folks on the committee that are actually pro-crypto, and so it's a chance of getting stuff done and getting through there. On the House side, Patrick McHenry, who was the one who passed the Fed 21 bill, he was the one who was very much of a labor of love from his perspective, passing the bill and actually got a lot of Democratic support for that, has decided to retire from Congress. He's going to play a great role on the outside to try to get stuff done, but it's still undecided as who's going to be the House Financial Services Committee chairman on the Republican side to sort of quarterback this bill through. There's a couple people, Bill Huizenga, French Hill, a couple other folks that are vying for that, and it'll be up to the Speaker of the House to basically figure out who gets those positions. Both of them will be very good. French Hill is currently from Arkansas. He's currently the head of the subcommittee on financial innovation, on cryptocurrencies and stuff. So he's well versed in these sorts of things. Maxine Waters on the Democratic side is looking to try to stay to be ranking member on that. She is, she's who she is. We have a great relationship with her at the Milken Institute. She is at the end of the day a deal maker on something, so she'll probably go on. So those are sort of the key players, and obviously President Trump weighing in himself and having some folks in the administration weigh in on this. So what will happen is that they'll start to move forward on sort of 3 separate bills, and there'll be a lot of back and forth on those. So that's the first opportunity for folks who care about any one of these 3 bills to weigh in on them. There's a couple ways to do it. One is to just contact whoever your current member of Congress is, and say, look, here's what I think about this, whether or not they are on the relevant committees or not, because you want to let them know that you actually care about it, right? So in Congress, there's sort of 3 groups of people when it comes to crypto. There's the pro-crypto, the anti-crypto, and the vast middle of folks, members of Congress, who either don't know what crypto is, have better things to do. I know we think it's the most important thing in the world, blockchain, crypto, all that sort of stuff. But they're busy doing other things. And so just to let them know, hey, this is something that I care about, that has been already extremely effective because you've got that fast middle, hadn't you paid attention to it, are starting to hear from constituents all over. Right? So there's the group Stand With Crypto, and there's some of these other groups that are there, grassroots stuff. Just let them know that you care about it because crypto blockchain type things hit every member of Congress. It's like real estate, right? There's we're going to talk a lot about real estate tomorrow, right? There's a phrase in Washington D.C. that's called getting realtored. What does that mean? Well, anytime you try to change something in housing or real estate or housing finance, the National Realtors Association and other folks, they gin up the folks, and they're incredibly effective on Congress. Why? Because it's a block that thinks the same, and they're in every single congressional. So crypto, blockchain, people who care about those issues, you have a similar ability to weigh in. The other is to weigh in with the people on the relevant committees. They're the ones that are going to be drafting the legislation. And so once you start to see that there's legislation, they will typically put out something they call a discussion draft, or they'll put out some ideas on some things. If there are some things that you really, really care about in the bills, you want to weigh in on that. So I'll just give you one example. They're going to have to start making choices between how they make policy choices as to sort of the more libertarian DeFi, no intermediaries in between. How do you sort of regulate that? And then how do things go through intermediaries, and how much does that actually fit within the existing framework that we already have for broker dealers and investment advisors and all that sort of stuff? They're going to be making a lot of choices there. And so to the extent that you can educate them about some of the things that they may either don't understand, misunderstand, that's incredibly helpful for folks. And you can just, the dirty little secret in Washington, D.C. is you don't need a lobbyist in meetings. You actually reach out to people. If you're a constituent, they will take those meetings, and they have really good staffers. Oh, the other thing to note about when it comes to financial innovation, fintech, crypto, blockchain stuff in particular, is the opposite. We've found it's the opposite of anything else to try to educate Congress. So normally, when we go to Congress and educate members and their staff, and the other thing is the key staff it's just important to meet with somebody for so long is that typically the members of Congress, holders 50, 60, 70s, they understand a lot of traditional finance stuff, and you're educating the 25-year-old staffer. When it comes to blockchain, crypto type issues, it's the opposite. It's the 25-year-old gets it right away. It's the 50, 60, 70-year-old member of Congress kind of like shaking their head. So that's why it's even more important to get the staffers, because they're the ones that have incredible influence on these particular things, right? The other big choice they're going to have to make is splitting up jurisdiction, right? So on the stablecoin bill, it's pretty much determined that one of the banking regulators, probably the Federal Reserve, will get jurisdiction over stablecoins, and they'll be subject to narrow banking and all that. That's pretty much a done deal. But there's some nuances there. If you care about stablecoins, you can talk about that. Using all the other things, it's going to get split up among one of the two markets regulators, the Securities and Exchange Commission or the Commodities and Exchange Commission, depending upon whether the tokens are securities or not. Right? And this is the big fight that's going on right now at the SEC, right? So SEC Chairman Gary Gensler, famously, when he was an MIT professor, said, almost everything is not a security. They're just utility tokens. Then he gets to the SEC.
And then things change.
Right? Where you stand depends on where you sit, right? So, and then he thinks almost everything.
That's a politician right there.
Exactly. And so, and the unfortunate part is, how is there's no regulatory regime. Folks that have gone in, in good faith, say, look, can you help provide some clarity? And the only way they provide clarity is slap you with a lawsuit and say, oh, you're trading an unregistered security on this. So it's been regulation by enforcement. It's the worst of all worlds. That's why Congress needs to come in and provide this clarity. And the way it works is Congress will have a bill that will set up a general framework to determine who gets jurisdiction between the SEC and CFTC. And there'll be some sort of mechanism for those two agencies to sort of work out the details on a case-by-case basis in order to do that, right? So at the first level is, if you care about these issues, who gets which jurisdiction. And the reason why you care is because they're labeled as securities. the amount of extra regulation on this is just a huge amount of that. And some are naturally going to be labeled as securities, but it's probably going to be a very small amount of that stuff. So you care about that. So, and that'll take a while to get past. I know there's a lot of enthusiasm, and I said, look, Congress moves very, very slow. It has to go through. The thing about crypto is it has to go through multiple, not just the two houses, but multiple committees. So the SEC is regulated by the Banking House Financial Services Committee. The CFTC is regulated by the Agriculture Committees for historical reasons. So it was agriculture commodities were the first things. Of course, now financial commodities and financial futures have dwarfed them, but for legacy reasons, it has to go through the I committees. And there's thorny tax issues, and so that goes through Senate Finance Committee and House Ways and Means Committee. So those tax issues might also get further broken up on those things. So if you care about some of the tax things, I know that there was a thing for the Senate a few years ago. There were some weird tax provisions and stuff. And there's the way the IRS works. There's possibly ends up in some situations where you would be responsible for reporting tax stuff that you have no ability to do with stuff. So if you care about those issues, those are the two relevant committees there. So because it's complicated, it's going to take a while to get through. Now, because President Trump cares so much about it, he's going to put a lot of focus on this to get this done. So from the majority leader in the Senate, who's yet to be figured out because McConnell said he's not coming back, or Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, to try to get that stuff done. So it'll take a while to do that.
No, I just had a quick question and perhaps the provisions change, but at least in the Senate, can't any committee member put a bill on an anonymous hold?
Yes. So to hold it, to move something forward. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's it. By the same token, you can move something on unanimous consent. So they have the ability to do that, but there are procedural ways to sort of get around. There's all kinds of machinations and stuff to get around it. Right. And then the other thing is, what's important in the Senate too, you just reminded me, is what's called floor time. The amount of time you spend on the floor on a bill to get past the filibuster thing. Right. The early part of the year, the first month or two, a lot of the floor time is going to be burned up getting nominations through the Senate. That can also be done by unanimous consent, but it's very contentious in Washington, D.C., starting with President Trump the first time, now carrying through with Biden, and now with Trump again. The other side is going to not allow unanimous consent to waive any of the time limits. They're going to try to slow stuff down as much as possible. Now, the cabinet level folks will get through fairly quickly, but they're going to slow down judges. They're going to slow down sort of the next level through. And so it'll take a while crypto bills are going to take a while just to write anyway. Then extending the tax provision, that bill's going to take a long time to get through and stuff. So it's going to be a while before it gets through. So that's why we at the Institute, we're actually holding a symposium in March of next year to get policymakers. By then, we think we know who the relevant people are. We know what the key issues are going to be. And then having our network of people who care about these issues be able to weigh in with them. We're doing a private event, a public event on that. If you want more information about that, it's going to be on March 5th. We're going to be doing Washington, D.C., and a chance to talk to the policymakers and hear from them on those sorts of things. So that's sort of the first step on sort of the bill, and then I can move to sort of the regulatory piece. There's a second bite of the apple to weigh in on stuff. Eric, any questions?
No. I know this sounds like we're getting into how the sausage is made a little bit, but it's vitally important because this is going to be that seminal moment that we can look back on and say, this is when the U.S. finally stepped up because it has abdicated a position of strength in this industry, and they've ceded it with no return to other sovereign countries. And so I think it's vitally important. That's why I wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sort of the why we care about this stuff, right? So Congress will set up some general frameworks, and then they will kick it to the regulators. And the SEC and CFTC will then have to write a bunch of rules and regulations. Now, the way it works for their independent regulatory agencies and our government has a system of checks and balances. And one of the checks and balances on the regulatory agencies is anytime they want to engage in rulemaking, they first have to put out what's called a proposed rule. And they will put that out, they will have a meeting, they will vote on it, they'll put it out on the website, and then they will put it out for public comment. What does that mean? means that anybody in the public is allowed to submit comments on the rule. Hey, we like this. No, we don't like this. This doesn't work. And you can do it through the website. There's an easy way to submit this thing. And by law, the regulatory agencies have to take into account all the comments. Now, some of them they might say, all right, this is just completely idiotic, but they have to address all of them. They say, you know what, this is a good point. We maybe change it. And that public comment period, I was an SEC commissioner for 5 years, acting chairman for that time. Those actually helped move the direction of how actually I can run out of time, but I give specific examples how we thought we were going to go left on a rule and ended up going right on a particular rule. And so,
as a result of the public comment.
Right? So that's the official public comment. You can also request a meeting with the staff and the commissioners. Again, there's no secret. You don't need a lobbyist to do it. You can check on the SEC and CFTC's website. They have email addresses for the commissioners who vote on these things and for the staff that are working for them, and you can go in and actually have meetings with them. Now, note that those meetings will become public because for government transparency reasons, they will drop a note to the file and say, on this particular rule, we had a meeting with XYZ and we discussed this thing or whatever. And that's just part of good government transparency in there. And you can actually go in and see who's in there and been talking about all the particular rules. It could be trade associations, could be individual firms, could be individuals, whatever it is. But you have the opportunity to do that. Now, if they do some minor tweaks based on public comments or nothing, they can move to a final rulemaking and then talk about compliance dates, all that sort of stuff. If they decide that, I kind of use an analogy without we're going to go left, go right, they will then re-propose a new rule and say, look, this is not a logical outgrowth of what we started from. There's legal reasons for doing that. Here's the new thing we're thinking about, and they will start the comment process over and over again. And so you will have, there's multiple bites of the apple. There will be multiple rule makings for the big piece of the legislation covering all kinds of different things. So there will be rules in terms of custody, and there will be rules in terms of who are deemed to be exchanges, and who are more like broker dealers and investment advisors and all that sort of stuff. And all that stuff will be covered. And so you can weigh in on any particular one of those or on different things. But it's important for the voice to be heard, right? So Congress very much generalist, and the regulatory agencies do have more of an expertise in this, but things are changing so much that they really want to hear from folks from the outside.
So the takeaway of that is this is your chance to participate in the process, but if you don't, you never get to complain with the results.
Right. If you don't weigh in, don't complain on this stuff, right?
No.
And it's actually the First Amendment right? The right to petition your government. So it's actually it's the First Amendment in the Constitution, and so there's a number of things that people just maybe haven't thought about, and you want to make sure you get this stuff right. Now there's actually more bites of the apple on the back end, but that's those are sort of the two big ways to weigh in.
Well, and they're also accessible.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing, because my understanding, and it's rudimentary at best, is the further down the trough you get, the more arduous it takes, to participate in that process. But this open period, it's open for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's other sort of subtle ways to do it, right? So they will hold hearings on this, and you'll be able to see there's different witnesses on things. And if you have a member of Congress and they have, they all want to look smart in the hearings and ask good questions. They don't want to ask a dumb question. So get a good rapport with one of the staffers and say, hey, here's a question you might want to ask this witness. And it doesn't necessarily have to get asked at the hearing. There's what's called questions for the record. So what you see in the hearing is only somewhere between 10 and 50% of the total questions that are asked of the witnesses. A lot of them are asked in writing afterwards to provide questions, quote unquote, for the record. It becomes part of the whole hearing transcript. And it's a way to sort of get people thinking about some of these things.
I don't know about you. I got a lot of value out of that. So let's thank, I always call him Dr. Piwowar for his time.